Alright, so in this video I am super excited because I'm going to be sharing with you guys a tip on how to cut curly hair so that when you go to dress it dresses straight easier. Okay, so my model James Russell Francis has curly hair. Now, typically what James will do is he'll cut his hair short so that he cuts a lot of the curl out so it's easier to comb straight. I know a lot of guys who do this so they don't have to deal with their curly hair. Well, I told James, hey, let your hair grow out a little bit and we can do a haircut, put it on film, and I'm going to cut your hair in a way that's going to make it easy for you to dress your curly hair straight. So, what we did is, James, like I said, typically will brush his hair straight or comb his hair straight, so when it dries kind of like a wave. It doesn't dry so curly. But trust me when I tell you, James' hair is curly. If he lets it grow out, it gets curly. But typically because he cuts it so short, it eliminates a lot of the curl. And because he also combs his hair straight, it eliminates a lot of the curl. So it doesn't look as curly when he styles it the way he styles it versus if he was to let it dry natural. So what I wanted him to do is I wanted him to grow his hair a little bit, just a little bit, so that we can cut his hair in a way so that when he goes to dress it straight, it will dress straight easier. And I wanted to share this tip with you. And I also did a ton of scissor overcomb explanation on this video. It's a great tutorial for those of you who are trying to strengthen your scissor overcomb. It's a fantastic video on how to scissor overcomb, a fantastic video on how to cut curly hair so you can dress it straight. And again, this is shorter hair, not longer hair. So this is like on James's head for those guys, those gals that have kind of shorter hair, how to cut it so that you can dress it straight easier. I actually did one on a girl. I filmed that video, but I haven't had a chance to edit it yet. Okay, let me give you an example. Let's take a ball of cotton, for instance. A ball of cotton is very similar to a set of curly hair, right? It's very soft, it's rounded, curly hair is rounded, it's not straight, it's not spiky, right? And so if you took a cotton ball and did this to curly hair, it would eventually start to make it so that the hair, or the cotton ball, starts to straighten. So basically, if you took a ball of cotton and you started to, you know what? Just watch the video. I explained the whole cotton ball theory on the video. I hope you guin enjoy this.
Alright guys, it's Yoshi Shiraki and we are back with another model. We've got James Francis here, James Russell Francis. What we're going to do is we're going to dive in. He's got a lot of hair. It's very thick, but it's actually soft. It's got a lot of texture. You can see it's curly. So we're going to take the sides in tight, the back in tight. I'm not 100% sure just yet how we're going to approach the top, whether we're going to do a square shape through the top. The hair pushes this way, and it grows that way naturally. And so one of the things that I'm considering is possibly doing something asymmetric. The theory is shorter hair pushes longer hair. And so if we cut it slightly asymmetric, it's going to help the hair go that way even easier. So that way we have an asymmetric shape over the top, but short and clean through the sides and back. Not sure if we're going to do a kind of a harder part on the sides, but we'll kind of, as we start to take the hair down, that's how we're going to start to decide what we want to do. One of the things that I like to do really quickly, usually I'll do this when I'm asking a client how do they want their hair cut. And while they're explaining to me, I'll just take my comb and kind of run the comb up the head like so. And I'm looking for scars that the client may have. Sometimes they'll tell you, I've got a big scar in the back. I don't really care if the scar shows. I like my hair short. But sometimes, they haven't had their hair cut short in a really long time, and you might stumble upon a really big scar. At that point, you can chat with the client to see, hey, I've noticed you have a scar back here. Would that be a problem if that is exposed through the haircut? Some people might say, yeah, I don't want to see that scar, so then you'll know to leave the hair a little bit longer. Some people will say, no, I don't care. But at least you gave them the opportunity to ask before you dove in and took the hair really short, exposed the scar, and then they turn around and see it through a mirror in the back, and they're like, oh my gosh, I totally didn't want to see that scar. So one of the things I'll do, like I said, is just kind of check to see if I see any major scars where I know I'm going to go short. Since we're leaving hair longer on the top, I'm not really worried if there's scars on his scalp up here because you're not going to see that. But since we're going to go shorter here, I just wanted to make sure that we don't have any scars. So on that note, let's get the hair wet and dive right into this. All right, so what we did here is we got the hair wet, of course. I chose to part it as natural part for now. The reason why I've got two clips here is because his hair is very curly, and so I want to keep that hair separated. If I just pushed it away with the comb, kind of combed it this way, that way, throughout the haircut, his hair is going to kind of shrink back into the curly texture that it is, kind of eliminating this nice clean part. This is his natural part right there. And so the clips right now are just simply to hold the hair away from kind of coming back together and closing back that part back up. Not a big deal. I mean, if you wanted to constantly squirt the hair and keep it wet, you could totally do that and keep combing the hair away from each other so that you could keep that part. But one of the things that I want to keep in mind as I do this haircut is I had talked about possibly doing a hard part, and so that's why I want to keep it there until we get to that point where I decide if we're going to do a hard part or not do a hard part. So I wanted to find his natural part. The easiest way to do that is obviously when his hair is wet. Once the hair dries, and especially with curly hair, you oftentimes can't even find the part. So while the hair was wet, I combed through it, kind of just pushed the hair. It naturally parted by itself, and then I just combed it away and clipped it. So the way I'm going to execute this is I'm going to start by taking the sides down first, then the back. Well, actually, I tend to like to work from the right side to the middle back, and then the left side to the middle back. And then once we've got that done, we'll figure out how we want to address the top. So on that note, let's dive into this. All right, so what I like to do when I execute the side, start to cut the side, is I will start right above the ear. And there's actually a reason why I like to start above the ear. The head, if you can imagine, the head shape is at the widest point is right above the ear. And then from there, it actually tapers down to the very tip of the nose. Same thing happens to the back. Widest part is above the ear, and then the head shape tapers to the occipital bone. And actually the same thing does to the top. Widest part's here, and it slowly tapers to the highest point of the scalp of an individual's head. So being that this is the widest point, I want to make sure that that's where I start, because if I take this too short and then start to work my way this way, I might be way too short here. So if I like the way that the length of the hair looks right above the ear, I can always adjust accordingly as I move forward and backwards. So for me, that's just where I personally like to start. Now that's being super technical. I don't think you're going to have, a terrible result if you did start right here at the very front. It's not the end of the world. But I prefer to start right here just because it is the widest point of the head, and I can make sure that if this is the shortest point, if I like the length at the widest point, I can always adjust accordingly as it narrows to the nose or to the back of the scalp. So, on that note, I'm going to pull the hair straight out, and I'm going to take this as tight as my fingers can go. If you have smaller hands, typically females have smaller hands than men, you might be able to get this hair a little bit tighter. My goal is to take it as tight as I possibly can with my fingers, so if you've got smaller hands, feel free to do the exact same. We're probably going to take it a little bit shorter once we have removed the bulk of the hair. But what I'm doing here is creating the general shape with my fingers on how I want the hair, and then I can adjust accordingly through scissor over comb, because the shape is already there. I don't need to recreate the shape, I just need to take the shape shorter when I start to execute scissor over comb. So, just going through, putting my fingers as tight against the scalp as possible to get it as short as possible. And I'm actually going to comb the top of this hair away for now. Okay, I'll let that come down in a minute, but I want to retain that length up there just in case we want to keep some of it, so I don't want to accidentally cut any of that here on the sides. Okay, so now just making sure this is as short as my fingers can take it. I first did this top section, now I'm just going through and doing the bottom section, meaning that I did this section up here first, the top of the sides, and now I'm down here doing the bottom section. Okay, so I can comb this back down now. You can see by combing it up, we left this length here. We might cut it later, I don't know, but I want to keep it just in case we want to save it for later. So now I'm going to start to work my way back behind the ear to the middle of the head. All right, so I'm just working in sections, and I'm over-directing the section that I'm cutting just to the previous section that I had just cut. And that's how I keep my guide. One thing that is also you can keep in mind, if you're cutting the hair as short as your fingers can go, you don't really even need to see the guide of the previous section, because you can cut the shape based off of feel, meaning that my knuckles are always touching his head. If my knuckles are always touching his head, no matter whether it's here, 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 I know it's going to be the same length, because the width of my fingers doesn't change from here to here. This is the width of my fingers, so that means that the hair is basically going to be the same length all the way around, unless for whatever reason my fingers start to swell up during this haircut. I usually don't have to worry about the length being different, even if I don't see the guide. So when you're cutting the hair as short as you can based off of the size of your hands, don't worry if you can't see the previous section. As long as your fingers are touching the head, you know it's the same length. It's only when you start to pull away from the head, well, now you got to make sure that you're not pulling away further here versus less there, versus more here versus less there versus more there. That's when it's important to see your section before you cut it. It's very important to see the previous section to make sure that you're not leaving hair longer or shorter on accident. But when you're cutting based off of the width of your fingers, as short as your fingers can go, you know it's pretty easy to just comb the hair and scoop it into your fingers and cut away, as long as your fingers are touching the scalp. Okay, I'm just working my way around. Now, one of the things that I like to do here in the back, because of the occipital bone, we want to make sure, I see a lot of haircuts where they take this part really short, and then of course they take the neckline really short, and then they create this type of shape, where because this is short, and the occipital bone is here, it sticks out, they've got a shape that when you look at it from a profile, it's kind of pointy here in the back. I like the appearance when we kind of camouflage and hide the occipital bone, meaning that I don't want to take this short. I want this to stay longer. And then if this is longer and this is shorter, usually it can camouflage the occipital bone. Now, some people have a flatter occipital bone, other people have really prominent occipital bones, so it's going to be up to you to decide how long you should leave this up here. So, having said that, as I get to this back section, right where the occipital bone starts to come out of the head, I'm going to be very conscientious of leaving the hair up here longer. And the way I do that is I actually over-direct it further away. So not basically where my fingers are touching the scalp like I had just mentioned. We'll do that down here. But up here in this section, just to make sure it's not shorter than the occipital bone, I'm going to over-direct the hair further away. The reason you over-direct further away is if this hair has to travel further away, it's going to be longer, right? The further hair has to travel, so let's assume this is one strand of hair. If I was to pull it straight out of the head and cut it right there with my fingers, it would be basically this short. However, if I pulled this hair and I over-directed it all the way over here and then cut here, well then when this hair falls, it's actually going to be as long as this comb, for instance, right? So the further you over-direct hair, the longer you're going to leave it. Now, this hair is obviously, shorter than the comb, so I can only over-direct it about an inch, it's about to here, a half an inch or so. So, as I pull this hair back, I'm you can see my hands slightly start to shift that way. That's just because I'm starting to over-direct the hair that way so that I leave it a little longer. Remember, obviously, we can always take hair shorter if we want to later, but it's difficult to do it the other way around. If you cut it off, it's difficult to make it longer again. So I'm going to have to wait, obviously, for it to grow out. So to eliminate that, I'm going to leave it longer and then cut it in phases if necessary. The more prominent the occipital bone, the more you're going to want to cut this section in phases. Cut it, leave it longer. Maybe it's too long, cut it a little bit more. Take a peek how it looks. If it's still too long, cut it a little more, a little more, a little more. There's nothing wrong with continually taking it down to the right length versus just whacking it off and then saying later, oh shoot, I should have left that a little longer. Okay. So now here at the occipital bone, okay, I'm working my way from here down to the bottom. I can take that as short as I want because I'm trying to camouflage the occipital bone. So that can be as short as we need it to be. I just need to leave the hair above it longer so that this shape happens, right? Kind of a smooth shape versus a triangular shape. Or even a square shape, right? Kind of a square shape or a slope shape, but we don't, excuse me, a square shape, sorry, my hands were in a weird position, or a diagonal shape opposed to a triangular shape. I'm just working my way around the head. I've already done this top part, so again, meaning top is above the occipital bone. We've already cut that, now I'm cutting below. And again, below, I'm just cutting right now as short as my fingers will allow me to go. So okay, so now we've gone from here to here. What we want to do is now address this side. So again, starting here, above the ear, I'm going to work my way forward, and then I'm going to work my way back, so I can now remove this clip. All right, so right here, we're going to start with this first section right above the ear. I'm going to pull the hair straight out, take it as short as my fingers can go. Again, we're going to take this hair shorter, but what I want to do with my fingers is create the general shape. Once the general shape's in, I can then start to scissor over comb the hair shorter, just following that shape. So I'm just taking, I'm not recreating a shape as I mentioned before, I'm just taking the current shape shorter. Cutting hair, you know, oftentimes when you're doing somebody for the very first time, I like to think of it, I've mentioned this before, as sculpting a statue. Whether you've ever sculpted a shape out of clay or wood, you know, you take a pocket knife and you start to shave pieces of that wood off to create whatever it is you want to create. You know, those guys that are masters at it can create anything. They can do they can shape a deer, an elk out of wood, or even humans. You know, they are capable of, like Mount Rushmore. They took that rock and sculpted that face. You know, anyone can sculpt. Anyone can remove slivers of wood, slivers of rock, slivers of concrete to sculpt a random shape, but only the experts can create, like Mount Rushmore, right? They take a mountain and literally put presidents' faces on it. There are people that can take a piece of wood and sculpt out, you know, things that are obvious, you know, such as a deer, an elk, a dog, whatever. But they don't do it in one shot. They don't literally take the piece of wood and go, okay, there's the antlers, there's the legs, there's the back legs, all right, there's my deer. That's just not how it happens. They take a little piece, a little piece, a little piece, they look at it, they brush it off, they blow on it, and then they take a little piece, little piece, little piece, they brush it off, they blow on it, they look at it. Before you know it, there's the antlers. Now they got to do the face, right? And that's like cutting hair. I don't just take one section and whack, 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 okay, the haircut's done. I take a little piece, little piece, little piece, I look at it, brush it off, kind of see what it does. So think of cutting hair similar to sculpting. If you treat it kind of like an artistic project, you're sculpting an artistic project, and meaning that you're actually looking at it to see how it looks, your haircut's going to come out typically better than if you treat it as a technique. Meaning, right now what I'm sharing with you is the technique I'm using. I start here above the ear, I work forward, and then I start here above the ear and I work backwards. That's the technique. I take vertical sections one by one by one. either over directing to the previous or going as short as my finger. That's the technique. That's the same thing with somebody who's going to sculpt a piece of wood. There's a technique to it, but at the end of the day, that technique, the way that technique is going to actually look like an elk and look really good is because the individual's creative eye is now taking that technique and sculpting what he wants to see. So, same thing here. I'm using the technique to cut the shape I want to see, but then I'm going to take little more off, similar to a sculptor, and use my eye at that point to create the shape that create the look that I want to see. So right now I'm creating the shape that I want to see, but that doesn't mean I like what I see. I have to then adjust this technique that I'm cutting to eventually be an end result of what I like to see, if that makes sense. So let me turn the chair. We're working our way to the back. So it's just all about taking little pieces at a time, looking at it, seeing how we like it, and addressing there at that particular point if we want to take it shorter, we want to leave it the length it is, how we want to approach that. So now we're here again at this pivotal point where I want to make sure I leave the hair a little bit longer right here above the occipital bone. So this is where I'm going to start to over-direct that way a little bit. So I'm grabbing the hair and you'll see my fingers slightly go this way, okay? That's because I'm over-directing to keep the length. So I'm pulling the hair and slightly over-directing to the left. And again, I'm cutting the top part, which is the part that's above the occipital bone, and then we'll go and cut the bottom part. So again, slightly over-directing. And again, I'm just leaving this length here. I may take it shorter, as I keep explaining. Right now it's about cutting the shape in, but then using the technique to cut the shape in, but then using my eye to adjust that shape into what I want to see. Okay, and again, just working my way to the middle. All right, so now we've got the hair a little bit longer here, and now we're going to take this in here shorter. So I'm going to start right here in the middle back, just take that as short as my fingers can go. And I'm just going to work my way down the neckline and working towards the front of the head. Okay, and just continually working towards the front of the head till we're out of hair. All right, so with the exception of the top, which we're leaving for last, I've now got the general shape of what I want to see as far as the haircut, but it's not the end result of what I want to see. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this shape that we created and actually take it down till I'm satisfied. Again, taking that example of being a sculptor, you know, you're just going to keep taking slivers and slivers and slivers away until you're satisfied with what the end result looks like. So we're going to start scissor over combing, taking this down shorter. I'm going to grab a wider tooth comb. That leaves the hair a little bit longer, obviously. Let me give you an example. So as you can see, this wider tooth comb will only allow you to cut the hair as short as that width of that comb. With this comb being skinnier, it would cut the hair a little bit shorter. So a good rule of thumb is if you're going to start to scissor over comb, use a wider tooth comb if you're afraid of cutting the hair too short on accident. And then you can always take it shorter, right? And even this comb right here, it starts to get shorter, a little bit skinnier on that end. Same with this thing, it's a little bit wider here. the teeth, actually I should say the teeth a little bit wider here, and then the teeth get a little bit smaller on that side. So even this comb, you can start to take the hair down little by little. So again, I like to start my scissor over comb right above the ear. Same reason that I like to start my sections there. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Now with scissor over comb, you want to just treat it and execute it in basically panels. So I'm going to do one panel right here above the ear, and then I'm going to do this front panel, and then I'm going to go work my way back and do another panel here, another panel there. And if you do it in panels, it's a lot easier to execute scissor over comb without getting flustered and being all over the place. I know a lot of people, when they do scissor over comb, they're kind of just all over the place. So if you do one panel at a time, make sure that panel looks good before you move to the next panel. It's usually easier to just say, okay, I'm going to scissor over comb one panel, make that one panel look good, and once that one panel looks good, go to the next panel. And then before you know it, you've scissor over combed the entire head. Okay, so you can see the hair right here grows forward. So I've got my comb in there, and I've cut it as short as I could with this side of the comb. I could take it a little shorter by using this side of the comb, and I could take it even shorter using another side, but I can also just push the hair down away from growing forward and address it that way as well. So okay, again, I'm just going to comb this front section away because I don't want to cut the top just yet. We're going to cut that and save that for last. And then right here on the sideburn, I want to make sure it blends down into the facial hair. So I'm going to take that in a little bit tighter. And right here on the hairline, one thing you can do is push the hair forward, and if you follow the hairline with your scissor, you can basically cut in that outline. So right here is the hairline, pushing that forward, and then right here I'm pushing that forward and cutting basically that hairline. So and then same thing with here, I'm going to push it back so that I can be clean right there. I'm going to take probably a smaller comb later and address the sideburn because that's going to be the shortest piece. And now I'm doing the front panel. Again, I just want to push that hair away so I don't accidentally cut it. And I'm just scissor over combing the outline so it's a little bit softer, kind of more of a blended feeling, not something so blunt and hard. I did cut it blunt and hard a second ago just to create the outline and get rid of a lot of the bulk of the hair, but now I'm going to just soften it up. And that's up to you. Now we're getting, like as I mentioned, we're getting to what's your visual artistic taste. So everything that I'm going to talk about pretty much moving forward is what I like, right? We all dress differently. We all have a different way that we dress based off of fashion, and hair's no different. You know, some people dress a particular way because they like the way that looks, and same thing with hair. I'll cut hair a certain way because I like the way that looks, and that's what makes all hairstylists awesome and unique and great, because every person out there has a different way that they like to wear their hair. So, you know, the tricky part about being a client is finding this stylist who cuts the way you like to see your hair. And that's how every stylist builds up a clientele, as those clients come in, they're really happy with the way that stylist finished their hair, and that stylist finished their hair based off of their artistic eye. You know, and that's the most, I would say that is the most important thing, well, not necessarily, that is one of the most important things that you can develop, is your own style that you like. For instance, I like to take pictures, but I'm far from a photographer. And if you looked at my pictures versus somebody else's pictures, you could usually tell, or even an artist who draws, you can, once you get to know that artist, you can usually tell if that's a Van Gogh or if that's not a Van Gogh, because you've learned how Van Gogh likes to do his art. And same thing with hair. We're all artists of hair, and so everything from here is now what my eye likes to see, right? So I'm creating the shape that I think artistically and visually looks good on that particular individual. So again, we're keeping the top for later. We're going to save that for later. Okay, and I'm just working my way around the head. Now someone might ask, why wouldn't you just want to take clippers to the head? And you can. This video, however, is a tutorial on scissor over comb. I love doing scissor over comb. Again, it's about this is about the artistic preferences that I have as a hair artist. Some people prefer clippers, and if that's you, that's great. I think it's good to be able to do both, and so it doesn't hurt to practice scissor over comb, and it doesn't hurt to practice clippers. So if somebody's asking, why wouldn't I just use clippers from the beginning? Well, you can. You definitely can, and if that's how you prefer to attack the haircut, then that's fantastic. That's great. I find scissor over comb to be very fun. For me, it's one of my favorite favorite techniques to execute in hair artistry. And so, although I like using clippers, I enjoy scissor over comb more. And well, since I'm the artist and you're the artist, you get to choose which technique you prefer to do. So in this case, we're doing scissor over comb. Okay, so now right here behind the ears is kind of a tricky spot to scissor over comb, because my hand won't go that way. Basically it's hard to get behind there. So one thing you can do is turn your hand from here to there. So if you flip your hand upside down, you can usually get that hair behind the ear. You could also pull the hair down and bring your hand up above. So this is the part that's tricky, is obviously because of the ear there. So if you bring your hand up above the ear and work in this angle, you can also get that hair. Okay, so now I'm going to start down here at the bottom and start removing this bulk. Again, I had cut it originally as short as my fingers would let me cut it. So now, because that is not the desired finished look, I've got to take it shorter than my fingers allow me to, which I'll use the comb, because the comb will allow me to take a shorter section. Or like I said before, if you want to use clippers, that's great as well. Sometimes when you cut a client for the very first time and you're doing a haircut that's not a complete fade, not a complete bald fade, meaning you're not just going in there and removing all the hair and at a zero, and you want to leave a shape, you want to leave some hair and create a shape. Sometimes it's good to do a mixture of both clipper work and scissor over comb. The only reason why is because scissor over comb, you can see, is a much slower process. The hair comes off in little tiny pieces, very similar to the theory of sculpting a piece of wood, where clippers, the second you go, that hair is gone. And in many cases, if you're doing someone for the first time, you might realize after the fact that, oh shoot, that doesn't look as good. Had I left a little hair there longer, it would look better. And that's why sometimes doing it in tiny little increments of, similar to sculpting a piece of wood, little pieces at a time, may help you understand that individual's head shape better. And I'll give you an example of why, or what I'm talking about. Everybody's head shape is different. Typical head shape is pretty flat here on the sides, occipital bone, and then kind of tapers down. But there are individuals that will have a bony kind of structure even lower. Some people will have more of a predominant side bone right there. And let's say that the guy has a lot of hair, and you just take the clippers and you go wham right there, and he's got this bony structure that goes across there. Or sometimes you see tissue, like the skin just wrinkles up here, and you take your clippers and you go right over that, and before you know it, the hair's gone, and you've got all these kind of lumps based off of either extra skin or a bony head. And you think to yourself, oh man, that doesn't look so good. I probably should have left the hair a little longer and kind of camouflaged that bony structure. That's kind of a random example on why for the very first time you cut someone, until you get to know their head shape, it might be good to do a little scissor over comb. And then once you've done a client over and over and over, well, actually once you've done a client once, you know their head shape. You know if they've got a bony head there or not, or extra skin. The next time you cut them, yeah, you could just go with the clippers and whack that hair right off and save some time. Again, this isn't about, you know, what I'm doing right now is I'm having fun sculpting a shape using scissor over comb. It's not really about saving time. This is obviously a slower process than clippers. There's no question about that. But I enjoy it more, which is why I like to do it. So, but I'm giving you just kind of ideas, because obviously right now I'm not in the salon having to worry about running behind and there's another client waiting. If that's the case and you're in the salon, we need to make sure that we're doing our best to stay on time. Obviously, we don't want to run behind, which is why then at that particular point, if you already know the structure, the bone structure, of your client, there might not be any need to do scissor over comb. You could just go right in there and whack the hair off really quickly with the clippers and save some time. Again, it's just going back. Think of hair cutting. You're sculpting a material. Some people sculpt wood, like I said. We're sculpting hair, and we're hair artists, and so we create a shape that looks good. All right, so now I'm just working my way, and with scissor over comb, my personal preference is I start at the left and I work around to the right. It just keeps it in, we talked about the panels, just doing it in panels all the way around the head. And now this panel obviously is a much longer panel because you're going from the bottom of the hairline to the top, where this is a shorter panel, right? Because there's half the hair on the side of the head than there is on the back. So now we have to work in these longer panels back here. And again, we got to remember we're trying to keep this hair up here longer. What we want to do is create a nice, smooth, kind of slanted shape here, not one that kind of points to the middle of an occipital bone. And now that I've mentioned it, you might see it more obvious. You're standing in the grocery line, and the guy in front of you just got a fresh haircut, but this was taken so short that you've got this shape here of some type of triangle where it's short there and then short here, but then due to the occipital bone, it sticks out, it kind of protrudes out in a triangle. That's just not, in my personal opinion, the most flattering shape of a head. And so, again, this is my personal artistic eye. I like a more smoother, kind of sloped, graduated shape, or even a square shape. To me, that is a more flattering shape. Now, everybody has their own opinion, so if you think a shape where the occipital bone protruding out of the head is more flattering, you're entitled to that opinion. We're all our own artists, and we all have our own, like I said, artistic eye that we think looks good. If I'm cutting down here, because I want it as short as I can, I'm putting the comb right against the skin and the scissor right against the comb, because I want to get this hair as short as possible. However, because I want to leave this hair a little bit longer, and let me make sure that you can see this in the camera, as I work my way up, I start to pull the comb and the scissor away, right? So that it starts off right against the skin, but as I work my way up, this comb slowly starts to come away from the head, and that's, by coming away from the head, that's what leaves it longer. Now this side, we don't have to worry about the ear because, well, granted you're right-handed and you hold the scissors in your right hand, the ear doesn't play effect on this side. We've got an open range over here, where on the other side, obviously, because I'm right-handed, I couldn't cut this hair right here very easily because of the ear. So that's why I had to turn my hand upside down to get that hair. So On this side, it's a little bit easier. Again, right here on the hairline, I've got the comb literally touching the head. It's flat against the head because I want this hair to be as short as possible. Very similar to where my hands were, right against his scalp as well, because I wanted to take the head as short as possible with my fingers. And then right here, I'm starting to, again, as I get up to the top, I'm starting to pull the comb away from the head little by little to leave it a little bit longer. Now we're getting closer to the side of the head, so I'm going to pull the ear down, get the comb in there, and then I can take the scissors and cut the hair behind the ear. But there's a technique that's called pill the apple technique. It's basically you've got your comb here, you turn it upside down so the teeth are facing downwards. At that point you can use your thumb to hold this down and you peel the apple. So basically here what I'm doing is I'm combing the hair down so that I can cut an outline if I want to with my scissors, right? And just while being able to hold the ear. You'll see some stylists, they'll ask their client to hold their ear, but you don't need to if you don't want to, if you do this particular technique. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the comb, and again, like we did before, I'm going to push the hair forward right here at the hairline, and then here down at this hairline, kind of around the curve, just to remove that hair, and then we'll soften it up with some scissor over comb. But I'm also going to do that right here too. Comb this hair forward. The comb is great because it allows you to kind of move hair where your fingers are too thick to grab them. So right here in this little space where I could never grab that hair because my fingers are too large in size, I can take the comb and push it forward, push the hair forward, and be able to address this part right here. So now what I've done is I've got two combs, and what I like to do is I'll hold one comb down here using these three fingers, sometimes just those two, while I hold this there. It saves me a little bit of time when I'm in the salon cutting to not have to switch combs back and forth, and you can even grab the barbering comb if you'd like, and then you've got all three combs in your hand to kind of rotate through and use whichever one you want. So in this case, I'll hold these two combs right here, and then I'll hold this one here in my hand, and it kind of just makes the time, it kind of just makes things go a little bit faster because you've just already got each comb already in your hand. Okay, so you can see this hair's a little bit longer right here. We want to take that down, and so I'm going to use the barbering comb to do so. Okay, so I'm just going to pull the ear down and get this hair down here right at the hairline, and then just work my way up. And now I'm getting the sideburn area. Taking that nice and short. And then again, I'm just going to soften the hairline with the barbering comb. Okay, so now I'm going to switch combs to the blue tooth comb, and hair's going to get a little longer, right? The barbering comb is great for the outline because the outline needs to be as short as possible. But as we work higher up the head, the hair gets a little longer, so just getting a little bit of a thicker comb. Okay, so now I'm turning them around, having them face forward again. All right, so as I take tiny pieces off, it's starting to look more and more like what I like to see. Okay, so now one of the things that I want to do is, we've already been doing this whole haircut without clippers at this point, but this is where it's going to make sense to definitely get some clippers and clean this neck hair away. You're just going to do it bald anyway, but let's pretend that your clippers, you're on the go and you forgot your charger and they die, and so I'm going to kind of go over how you can clean this neck hair without any scissors. So we might as well do this haircut without any clippers. So we might as well finish this haircut off, this back without any clippers. So what you want to do is you want to make sure the skin is tight as can be. If he pulls his head up, creates wrinkles, and then that's when you will cut his skin. So depending on where you're cutting, so I'm going to be cutting here, I'm going to push the head away so that it's as tight as possible, okay? And then once I've pushed the head away, I'm going to take my finger and pull the skin even tighter, okay? And then at that point, I don't have to worry about cutting his skin. And so I'll just put the scissors flat against his skin and just start cutting the hair. So again, pulling the skin as tight as I can. Okay, pulling it tight, tight, tight. I'm going to use my thumb in this direction to pull it tight. Okay, and little by little, we're just going to start to cut the hair off. And a good way to practice this, and again, this is just if for whatever reason your clippers break, they die, you don't have a charger, whatever it is, and you need to get rid of this hair, and your clippers are not working, this is a great way to do it. So, good way to practice this is you get your wrist, you pull it as tight as you can, and then you just start cutting the hair on your wrist. If you wrinkle your skin, then that's when you're going to cut your skin. So pull it tight, and you can see that I'm taking the hair in this little section and making it bald, right? So that's a good way to practice this. So let's continue getting this hair off. Pull the skin tight, and then just basically go ahead and start cutting that away. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go through the top and take one section at a time. Okay, I'm going to comb the hair up, and I'm going to actually switch combs. And I'm going to take a lot of this hair away. And I'm going to do that by cutting little tiny V, like the letter V. I'm going to cut this direction and then that direction. I'm going to do a bunch of tiny little V's. And that's just going in there and removing a lot of the weight, a lot of his hair at the tips, right? I'm only going above my fingers, so he still has all that hair at his scalp. But this is just going to create more of a textured top so that it can move around and not really curl so much into a tight curl. Nothing wrong with a tight curl. He can always dress it that way, but he'll have two options now. Until the hair grows out, he can dress it kind of more, I don't want to say spiky because it's not going to be spiky, but more spiky than a curl. A curl's not a spike at all, right? A curl just bends. Spikes are points and curls are round things that bend. And basically, I'm giving James the option here to be able to kind of have a bending texturized spike. It doesn't curl all the way necessarily because we're obviously cutting it, but he's going to be able to wear it a little bit different than he normally has. So okay, and I'm just pulling the hair. When I get it in my fingers, I'm just pulling it so I can make that little letter V. And I'm not making a big V by any means. It is a small V. Don't take a big V right off the bat. I mean, if he's got a ton of hair and you've done his hair before and you feel like, I'm just going to whack into it because you know you can, then that's great. But it's always better to do little V's, and then you can make the V's bigger and bigger and bigger as you go. Okay, and right here at the front is where I really want to do these letter V's, because this is where his hair is the curliest. Out of all his head, from my experience of cutting it today, the curliest is right here at the very, very front. And I want to break that curl up. He can wear it curly if he wants, but I also want to give him the option to wear it less curly. You can't cut curl out completely, but you can soften the curl by removing a lot of the hair. And another thing you can do, I wouldn't do this on the first section, so we've got this first front section down, but I can come in here, and actually let me pull that away. I don't like doing it for the front section. I like the front section to be as long as possible with no texturizing, but I can come in here and remove some weight. I'm going to start here at the scalp, and let me trim this, and I'm not closing my scissor all the way, okay, so I'm just barely closing it and then kind of working my way up his head, up the hair. So right here at the scalp, I start slowly cutting, but not closing it all the way, and I work my way up. And I'm basically removing good chunks of hair. You can see these chunks falling out. He's just got so much of it, so it's not going to be a problem to take some of it out. If he was to have fine hair, I probably wouldn't be doing this particular technique. So, something to keep in mind to help texturize thick hair. You know, the thicker the hair is, the more it just sits there like a ball of cotton. So if you break into that ball of cotton and start shredding it, it becomes thinner and thinner and thinner and more wispy and more texturized. That's basically what we're doing here. I'm just going through and creating. See, by doing this, we've eliminated a lot of that curl. Of course, we blew dry it straight too, but we now have these points that we didn't have before, which gives James that ability to wear it outside of just being curly. Same thing, I'm going through the top now. I went through and I did a lot of those letter V's. It's still very thick. So now I'm just going through it again and doing that technique where I just cut pieces of the hair off, but I don't close my blade all the way. Okay, and then comb it all out, and you can see all this hair that comes out. And it's just removing blocks of weight in James's hair. And see, it looks heavy right here, so as I look at it, I just kind of take a peek where it looks heavy. It looks heavy right here, so I'm going to go through there. Okay, and you can see it's becoming more, you know, like a broken, torn up cotton ball, right? It's becoming more pointy opposed to just this round ball of cotton, and that's the effect we're going for. You know, guys with straight hair, well, their hair just goes straight and they don't have to necessarily, you can texturize it to give it a cool texturized look, but they don't have to work at figuring out how to make their hair have these types of points, you know, throughout the haircut. Guys with curly hair, they have a much more difficult time making their hair, if they wanted to dress it kind of like, you know, chunky, if that's a good word for this. And so this is a good way to kind of break into that ball of cotton and give them the ability to wear it chunky if they want. Now, I don't like I said, doing it with the front section, because I like the front section to be solid. I don't like little, especially because it's curly. If I was to go in here right at the front and start slicing, he's going to have these little frizzies at the hairline, and especially because the most curliest part on his head is the front. That's the last place that I really want to go in there and create frizziness. So again, it's still heavy. I'm going to take this front piece out of the way so I don't cut it. But it's still heavy right here. And right here. And I don't know if you could see the pockets of weight on the camera, but when you're standing right over the head of hair, you can see the pockets of weight a lot easier. Okay, so now I'm going to blow dry the hair off of James, so give me a second here. Not really blow drying the hair, but I just get all this hair off of him. Okay, so now what I want to do is go in here, and we created this part. I do want to make a line. I want to edge in a little more distinct part. So I'm going to take the clipper and just kind of edge in a nice little part. Okay, so you can see we edged in a nice little part. Nothing too thick, just something kind of to really separate one side from the other. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to just go ahead and blow all the hair off as much as I can out of James's hair, and then we'll put some product in there. Okay, so one of my favorite products that I like to use is this Sebastian Clay. It's a pomade, but more of a dry pomade. I prefer the dry look versus the wet look, so I'm not huge on gels. I do like gels, but gels tend to give it more of a spiky look opposed to a textured, chunky look. I kind of like more of a chunky versus spiky look. And I'm just going to put this pomade into my hand and kind of manipulate it in to James's hair. I'm going to kind of pull and twist where I want to see texture. And right now I'm just kind of working it in, but here at the front I'm kind of pulling it straight and twisting. And what that does is the twisting creates separation in the hair, right? So it's not just one ball of cotton as we talked about. It's got these different chunky type ends that make it look really cool. And so I like to go through and just kind of twist it up where you see fit, wherever you want to see the hair kind of get piecey and chunky. Just go over to that particular spot, you know, and play with it. And here's the thing, once you start applying product, you might notice that there's still a couple of spots that are still a little heavy. So like right here, I'm going to take this piece, again, not cutting the hair all the way, not closing the blade all the way. Another thick piece here. Another thick piece here. And I'm noticing them now that the product's in the hair, right? I can see as I try and make it look chunky, it's still too thick. Okay, so, all right, so as a recap, we're done. So as a recap, let's talk about what we did. I'm going to turn James to face the camera. The first thing that we did is we sectioned off the top because I wasn't sure if we were going to go square. I wasn't sure if I was even going to cut a part line into the head, or if I was going to go asymmetric. So I knew I wanted to leave that for the end and kind of let the rest of the haircut inspire me to finish the top. The way that the sides and the back developed is what inspired and influenced me on how I wanted to finish the top. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes I do the top first because I'm not sure how tight I want to take the sides and back. And so I'll start at the top and work my way down. But in this case, I knew I wanted the sides tighter and leave the top a little bit long so we could have some stuff to play with, some texture up here to play with. So after sectioning the top off, we went through, cut the sides with our fingers first, just to remove all the weight and create a longer version of this shape. And then I wanted to take it down, take it down, take it down. As you could see throughout the video, we took it down numerous times until I found what I felt was visually the best length of what I'm thinking is cool today. You know, 2 years from now, I might not want to cut hair as tight. I might want it longer. You know, fashion changes, and of course your mood for fashion will change as that happens. So in this particular case, we then went through and did the back. And as you can see, I'm not a huge fan, as I talked about, on hard lines, so it's more of a blended line. And of course we did this side as well. And then after we finished cutting the sides and the back at the proper length of where we wanted, that's when we went to the top part, and I felt like I wanted to keep the length that he had over here. I liked, after I started playing with the hair, I liked how it was. It's very soft, even though he has a lot and even though it's curly, it's very soft. And I knew we would be able to do some texturizing up here, give it some texture. I thought it'd be cool. But in order to do that, you actually have to have some length to be able to texturize. If we took it too short, we wouldn't be able to. And I liked how the hair kind of flowed to one side. Gives it a little bit of character versus being completely square, which is why I decided to do a little bit of an asymmetric shape on top. As you can see, it's not super asymmetric. It's subtle, but it's still really cool. Gives it a nice little bit of different feel, a little bit of its own independent character, and yeah, and that's it. Oh, and then kind of finished it off by doing some texturizing just because James has so much hair on the top. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. All right, thanks guys.
Hey, if you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more great videos. And also, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to put them down in the comment section below, because I look forward to building a relationship with each and every one of you guys, and I want to thank you so very much for watching.